So Zack, you won this massive mandate from Green Party members. Looking very slick, if you don't know what I'm saying. There's your face behind you.
Yeah, that's still weird.
Is that, yeah, I was going to say, do you find it a bit, I would hate that actually, to be honest.
I mean, it's not my favourite part of the job, but I think at some point you just kind of have to own it and go, this is about building a team, but at the front of the team is a face. And if I'm the face of a party, I've kind of signed up for that.
I like it, you've kind of sort of got the visionary, looking into the distance, but also looking anxious about the future to come.
That's exactly what I'm going for. I'm glad it's coming across. Yeah.
I just want to start, I mean, so as you've said, you're only the 5th Jewish leader of a national political party in this country in the last 100 years. First one was Disraeli. Disraeli to Polanski will be a PhD thesis at some point, I imagine. What a time, though. What a time, because, you know, anti-Semitism is on the rise. And we have Israel, which presents itself as the Jewish state, committing a genocide. And, you know, an atmosphere, and you know, we've seen this hideous anti-Semitic terrorist attack this week. I want to start with that, actually. I mean, what impact does that have on the Jewish community? What responsibility do you feel as a Jewish political leader at a time like that?
Yeah, I think my first response is a human response, and sometimes you try and find different words for this. You're like, how can I be more interesting or say something insightful on the news or on a podcast? And I think sometimes you go, there's almost nothing new to say. It's horrific. It's an atrocity. And I think it's important to start off there. I think it is also important just on a personal level. I grew up in Manchester, moved to Stockport. We've got that in common. I went to a synagogue near this synagogue. I went to a Jewish school near this synagogue. So it does hit, I think, differently when you've got that personal connection to it. I also think you're always trying to find the balance between recognizing the atrocity that's happening and also talking about the genocide in Gaza. Now, these are two very separate things, but we know that the mainstream media in the past 24 hours, largely led by Labour politicians Shabana Mahmood and now Keir Starmer, have pushed to weaponize to try and conflate these things, talking about the fact that people are marching and isn't that inappropriate at the same time as this terrorist attack happened. And I felt the responsibility in the last 24 hours to just be really clear about that moral consistency actually says this is a devastating terrorist attack. And in the same breath, you can absolutely talk about the fact, you must talk about the fact that the equivalent of, on average, a classroom of children are dying every day in Gaza. And I don't think those two things should ever be held in opposition. They're separate conversation, but for some reason, well, we know the reason, because we have a government who wants to crush dissent. They very cynically tried to use this moment to continue to push for dissent, to push opposition to the dissent against the genocide in Gaza.
The argument being made by those politicians, by media outlets, and also, for example, the Board of Deputies, which is the official communal organisation of Jewish communities in Britain, is that these protests cause harassment of Jewish people. Either, well, in many cases, the argument is it's willful, it's deliberate. What's your view on that when people say that these protests should not take place because they are causing distress and are actually harassing Jewish people?
I think it's a deeply cynical move for them to make. I've been on nearly every single one of those marches that I can make. I often walk in the Jewish bloc, which is sizable. And I think it's also important, the Board of Deputies does represent a lot of Jewish people. It would be disingenuous for me to pretend any otherwise. But it's outrageous for one organisation or one person to pretend that they speak for the entire Jewish community. The Board of Deputies are often platformed as if that's the mainstream, the only Jewish opinion. And then there's that phrase that other Jews are bad Jews or not quite the right kind of Jews. And that's certainly something I felt quite viscerally sometimes, particularly online when you're speaking, and often not even saying anything contentious. You're just talking about peace and diplomacy. You're talking about children and adults. No one deserves to die. And that's presented as the kind of controversial or contentious position, whereas I think the contentious position is defending bombs raining down on people.
One of the things I'm really taken aback by is there was a big controversy over the IRA official definition of anti-Semitism, which has been adopted by the British government and multiple other institutions. And there was controversy because of a couple of examples, the argument being that stifles critique of Israel. But there's one example which everybody should just agree is anti-Semitism, which is holding Jews responsible for the actions of Israel. Yeah. And that's clear anti-Semitism. It's astonishing. It strikes me that many cheerleaders of Israel are trashing that demarcation by making the argument that condemning the actions of Israel is causing the risk of violence against Jews to escalate. And that was made by a number of figures yesterday, after the horrific, heinous attack, that the demonization of Israel is causing the threat to Jews to increase. But by definition, surely that's violating what the IRA example says, which is to make clear there is a demarcation. You should not link Jewish people with the state of Israel's actions.
I think that's entirely right. And I was just listening to you then, and I'm reflecting on myself in this own interview. We're watching every single word, and it's quite unusual for both of us. We're usually quite fluent, quick speakers. And it's because there's this atmosphere around so much of these things where people feel like they're treading on eggshells, and everyone should be sensitive, everyone should be nuanced. So I actually think it's right we're watching our words, but I also think it's really telling that people don't watch their words in the same way when they, Emily Thornberry goes out on TV and says, food and water, cut it off from Israel, that they have the right to do that. She said that's not what she meant, but she went out and doubled it, and obviously challenged her on it recently, and I wasn't convinced by the response she gave. I think there's more nuanced conversations too. I've been thinking a lot about, because I've been asked, should the Palestine March go on Saturday? And I absolutely think it should, because actually the antidote to terrorism is not to drop democracy or not to drop non-violent protest. Also though, and it's not my role to do this, but I think there's an argument for some of those protests to happen on Sunday, partly so Jewish people can go and join in on them. And so I think all of this is more nuanced in terms of how can we find always the kindness and compassion in how to work with other people and tackle community kind of tension in a sensitive way, but also that can never be done to silence dissent. And so it requires, in fact, I think Hilton talked about this actually, about using grace. So how do we find, actually it wasn't Hilton, it was Lewis Goodall. I don't know why I've mixed those two people up.
Very different people.
Exactly,
Lewis
sorry.
Goodall used to be BBC Newsnight and now is the news agents with Emily Maitlis and John Sobel.
I've just been listening to a lot of people recently.
Yeah.
But I thought he made a good point, although I didn't agree in the context he was talking about it. But having grace in politics and actually going, how can we work with other people and try not to unnecessarily cause offence, although causing offence cannot be the reason to stop doing things when it's the right thing to do. And all of that is nuanced, but I think it's incumbent on all of us who are in public spaces to always look for the nuance and how can we be better versions of ourselves, whether that's as politicians or human beings.
Just put something to you and see what you think about this. You are doing the media round after this hideous anti-Semitic attack because Green Party conference is on, therefore it came up. Do you think the way the media spoke to you was, if you were, I'll just say it actually, if you were someone who was pro-Israel, I think the media would have said, here's a Jewish leader speaking at this particular moment. If you were kind of accepting the official narrative of most politicians and media outlets. Yeah. But it doesn't strike me that you had any deference. I saw the way you were spoke to on BBC on the Today programme, and it did not at all come across as though they were trying to, they thought, well, here's someone who's Jewish, who's part of the Jewish community, a Mancunian Jew, no less. It didn't seem like you were not treated as, here's someone with Jewish experience who has a lived experience we should be respecting in a way that would have happened if you had a different view. What do you think? Is that true?
Yeah, I want to put a caveat in here, which I can't stand it when politicians whine. I actually think it's our job to be held accountable. And actually, when we face tough questions, when journalists ask you the questions you don't want to be asked, I think it's our job partly to take it and push back. I also think your observation is fair enough as well at the same time. And I think both of those things can be true. That I really compare the interview I had on the Today programme with an interview I had maybe half an hour later on a different channel. I was asked pretty much the same questions, but on the different channel, the tone was different. It was much more respectful about the fact we just had a terrorist attack, and I was given space to actually answer the question. And I imagine the viewer and the listener got a better experience from it because they found out what I actually thought. I thought the Today programme was a disgusting interview, and I say that in the same breath that they're entitled to give a disgusting interview. I'm entitled to be disgusted by it. Those things are all fair enough. But I go, did any listener to the Today programme yesterday come off any more enlightened, any more aware of what my views were, or actually was I just harangued a day after there'd been a terrorist attack?
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. Let's talk about the Green Party and your leadership. And firstly, I think it's fair to say that leadership election was pretty acrimonious, if I'm honest. You were standing against two MPs, Ada Ramsey and Ellie Childs, and it struck me as quite bitter. And I think that bitterness that kind of division came from the fact they represent 2 rural seats which they won off the Conservatives, and they're not representative of your target seats, which are largely urban constituencies, but they fear the kind of eco-populist, leftist message positioning the Greens on the left. Do you not think that's an issue? Because Ellie Chowns is the leader of the Greens parliamentary wing, and people look at that and think, well, actually the Greens are supposed to be this kind of nice, the happy party, but actually kind of replicating some of the Labour divisions that existed under Jeremy Corbyn. Do you think that's fair? How's that going to work?
Well, this is where we're going to start disagreeing with each other, which is really interesting. Yes. So I don't think it was that acrimonious when you compare it to other political parties where they seem pretty grim. I think there was a moment that was particularly acrimonious, which was on the Ian Dale show on LBC. Now, just to give that in context, the way they set up that programme was they got me and Adrian to interview each other. And then after it got a bit kind of not as polite and kind as we usually are, Ian Dale then spent half an hour afterwards taking callers going, oh my God, they don't agree with each other. We didn't think the Green Party was like that.
Let's be clear. Adrian Ramsey was asked repeatedly if he liked you, and he couldn't say that.
Sure.
And it was I found that shocking to watch. Do you know, that does not come across like a united party when you can't even say you like it,
Yeah, I guess, for me, the personal and the political are intermingled. So I do like all my colleagues and I'm happy to go for a pint of coffee with them. I think Adrian is a different kind of politician and I think that's okay. I don't know him particularly well personally. Politically, though, I was his deputy leader for 3 or 4 years and I can say genuinely, it's not like we ever had, we had disagreements, but there was never kind of an acrimonious disagreement. Ellie is a much easier answer because I genuinely love Ellie. We get on dance floors together. We're pretty much in the same place politically, as I am with Adrian, to be honest. But a lot of it is about a tonal shift. And I think what you were witnessing, and I think we're over it already, but I think during the campaign, what we were witnessing was an uncomfortability about a party that was going to start doing bold politics, that was not going to kind of, when the right-wing media go at us. I think there's been an instinct in the Green Party for a long time, and I dare say we saw this in Jeremy Corbyn too, to kind of back down sometimes or immediately apologise, and to sometimes get the apology wrong. So sometimes to apologise for the things you shouldn't for, and when you do need to apologise, to not apologise. So then that becomes messy. But I think that 85% win, I was really struck by how quickly actually, and it's been congruent the entire time now, to actually go, no, people in this party really want bold politics. And I think the fact that as we speak, literally an hour ago, we've overtaken the Liberal Democrats in membership numbers. I think this number can't be underestimated. Since I launched my leadership bid, the Green Party membership has grown by 33%. That's pretty huge. So I think not just the MPs, but the members, the councillors, and myself included, are looking at this party now and going, actually, this is a party that wants bold politics. And actually, we're completely aligned and congruent in saying we need to just say it how it is and actually talk about the things that we stand against. Now, I think the MPs were already doing that, but I think I've observed a tonal shift, I think, in terms of going, we don't need to worry about what the right-wing media say about us. They're going to attack us anyway. And actually, speaking personally, I think, so yesterday when I gave my speech, the Labour Party put out a statement 10, 15 minutes later, I think. I was absolutely delighted.
I was going to say, you'd have been gutted if they said nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And traditionally, I don't think they've ever responded to a Green Party.
And they accuse you of fostering division. That's what they said. What do you say when the Labour Party say that?
I mean, for Keir Starmer to accuse me of fostering division, the man who talked about an island of strangers, the 2-child benefit cap, the disability cuts, the enabling of an ongoing genocide in Gaza, his general approach to his entire party to say, if you don't like it, there's the door. I mean, this is one of the most divisive people in British politics.
He's not that divisive if you look at the polls. People have got quite a unified view of him, actually.
Very good. And actually, I genuinely think, had my speech been really divisive, I'd actually stand by that right now, because I think we're in a moment where actually we do need to make some divisions. But my speech was 95% about hope, community, solidarity, bringing together the 99%. And literally the only division in it was Donald Trump and multimillionaires and billionaires who don't pay their fair share of tax. And so Keir Starmer is accusing me of division. I mean, there's almost no words for it. It's so absurd.
But in terms of possible divisions, I guess, because the personal stuff, obviously, I'm not interested in. But in terms of, your mandate, as I would interpret it, is 39 seats where the Greens are second behind Labour are urban Labour seats where people voted for the Greens last time overwhelmingly because they wanted a party to the left of Labour. and those members want the Greens to be clearly a left-wing political party and not shy away from that. But half of the MPs are in rural constituencies that are nothing like that.
Yes.
And the more you speak out in a kind of, we're authentically left-wing, we stand as a left-wing party, those voters are going to freak out. That's the danger. And those two MPs are going to respond to that by pushing back loudly against the things you're talking about.
So that's why you need to watch Rachel Millward's speech, who's the co-deputy leader with Motton Ali. She literally just did it on the conference floor. She's the co-leader of Wealdon Council, a very rural council. And actually, if we don't turn up in those spaces, and I really mean this, reform will. And so I think this is where we have a unique difference to, say, other left-wing potential parties. I don't know who I could possibly be talking about, where they have a base vote that I agree with and I align with, and those are my politics. But I think if you speak in that, and I'm not suggesting they're doing that, we don't know what they're going to do yet, but at the moment signs say that that might be the group they're speaking to. I think there is an irresponsibility there in terms of growing a mass party, and those are all choices, so it's up to people what they want to do. But I've always been clear, and I stand by it now, that actually inequality hurts you, whether you live in a town or a city or the countryside. Now, I'm not going to be disingenuous. You know me well enough to know when I'm in a city, I'm in London or Manchester, I'm in a place where it's much more easy for me to speak to those voters. I'm from those areas, I understand those areas. But I can genuinely tell you, and you're welcome to come out with me, that when I put on my Wellingtons and I go to those rural seats, they are worried about the same issues. You might change the context in which you talk about it. You might be talking to farmers who are being screwed over by supermarkets, but you talk about food security and the need for food security. Those people, even if they're in the wealthiest houses in the rural communities, they still have children and grandchildren in the cities, and they're worried and they want rent controls. So I think this is ultimately about, are you a human being as a politician that can connect with people wherever they come from, even if they're completely different from your background? And I think that's the unique offer the Green Party's had. Now the challenge, and I accept this completely, is to make sure in doing that kind of broader message, you're not diluting the message that is ultimately, and I've talked about bold politics, so we're going to have to stick with that, and we are going to stick with an authentic message that's congruent. But I absolutely believe that those rural communities want that message too. What they ultimately want is a rejection of the way that politics has been done by the old establishment parties. That's why a lot of them are turning to reform. And I think what we have to do is turn up in the same way that reform do, but rather than offer this politics of hate and division, offer a politics of hope and community. And the most difficult place to do that on, I accept, is immigration. Everything else I feel is pretty easy. I think I've got it covered and I could go into it. Immigration, I think, is a work in progress. And I think all of those on the left and all of those who are progressive, we know what our alternative story to migration is. I could tell it you. What I don't yet quite have is what is that alternative story to migration that speaks to those people who are really worried about migration in a way that really hits.
Well, just before I want to ask about about the kind of big issues, but the suspicion some people have about the Greens is they're shapeshifters. That, in the Ed Miliband era, when it was austerity light, the Greens positioned themselves as left of Labour. When Corbyn became leader, a lot of the people in the Green Party just left and joined the Labour Party who were lefties, and it all became a bit, let's go in people's vote rallies with Anna Soubry, the former Conservative MP, kind of a certain type of middle-class liberal who lives in a big house, for whom Brexit was the only thing that really mattered. And it seemed to be repositioning there. Now Labour's gone right-wing again, the Greens have shifted to the left. But you see, people might look at that and think, well, this isn't primarily a left-wing party. It's a party which, obviously, climate is at the centre, but it will shift. And people will look at that and think, how come, a lot of the members, people think, oh, they're kind of a bit Lib Demi, I don't know. What do you say to that?
There's a few things. I'd say we are a left-wing party and we're a socialist party, but the important thing is it's not for the leader to decide that. It's up to the members to decide that. And the key ingredient here is we're a democratic party that is one member, one vote. So ultimately, the members decide. Now, obviously, I don't not play any role in that. I have the microphone, I'm often doing the media. And so the messages I say matter in terms of soft power. But ultimately, if I shifted for a second away from the things that I've been elected from, this would not be a Keir Starmer situation where he can run on the coattails of Jeremy Corbyn and then ditch every single pledge, pretty much every single pledge, as quickly as he possibly can and get considerably worse. The moment the membership felt that I wasn't in the place that I promised to be, I would very quickly hear about it and being held accountable. So I'd say the difference is there are accountability mechanisms within the Green Party. Obviously, the wider thing I'd say is that I mean what I say and this is what I'm going to do, but of course I would say that. So I think the accountability bit is the bit that really matters.
Just in terms of how you win over working class voters in particular, because a lot at the moment people, they get the climate bit.
Yeah.
Palestine has come through and you've had huge moral clarity and courage on the genocide. But, the kind of bread and butter issues that people care about, unless you talk to them in a language they understand, you won't win them over. So what are the kind of how are you going to, what's new in terms of the clear messages you're going to get to people for whom life is really hard? The economic system clearly not working for millions of people, worst squeeze in living standards since the Victorian age. What's the message?
Yeah, so when I was writing my speech for yesterday, we had a whole conversation that political parties always do about what is the new policy, what is the new thing we're offering the media, or the public more importantly, to say this is our new thing. And I just really felt strongly, actually, we didn't need a new thing. We needed to go back to basics. The fact, exactly as you just said, living standards are being squeezed, people have higher bills, their wages aren't going up, trade union membership is considerably down. All of these things absolutely need to be the focus. And I've been asked lots of times this morning in the media round, why was environment and climate so late in your speech? And I think the answer is really obvious. When people are polled, including especially people from other parties, everyone trusts the Green Party on the climate and the environment, and that's not going to change. We're going to stick with those policies. But why would I spend my time talking about that when actually I need to do exactly what you just said? Make sure that working class communities know we've got their back. And I think this is where it's not just about me, it's about growing a team, it's about people in those communities being able to speak for their community, getting elected in their community. And genuinely the thing that excites me most about the mission we're about to go on, just use the word mission, the road, the path,
the journey.
Yeah, the journey we're about to go on, is that some of our future MPs, I genuinely think, are only just joining the Green Party now, or maybe even not on members yet. They're going to join in the next few weeks, or maybe during this interview, just a subtle hint there. But those people in those communities, I think that's really exciting, where you start to go, I'm going to look at those green benches and see people in the north, see people in Wales from working class towns who join the Green Party. I think Mothan's a good example of this. Like people,
he's the deputy leader, Mothan.
Deputy leader. He's very well known for his positions on Palestine and his positions on social justice. But actually, he's a gardener. He's a horticulturalist.
Yeah, we're looking at the YouTube. The videographer who obviously is behind the camera here, Jack. Hi, Jack. Showed me the YouTube channel. So I was looking at on the train. He's a very good gardener.
It's amazing, and you get him on horticulture, and it just flows off the tongue. And so I just think that's really interesting because, again, the way the right-wing media largely have portrayed him in the short time he's been co-deputy leader is a completely different thing to who he actually is. And so I think there's just an interesting moment there for us as a party to go, let's keep surprising people. And there is often a cliche that the party is middle class, it's white, everyone is vegan. And the polling actually shows it's completely different. Now, do I want to do much more? I only need to look at the hall to go, the party is not as diverse as I want it to be. It's not as working class when I speak to people as I want it to be. But actually, when I look at our elected representatives across the country, England and Wales, South Tyneside, Biker, we've got elected representatives now.
Biker, Grove.
Exactly, there we go. I had to do the jingle.
I'm a geriatric millennial.
Amazing moment. And in Wales, we're looking at winning seats in the Senate for the first time. So there's still loads more work to do. I'm not complacent for a second, but I think the cliches of the party are actually dated way back, and actually we're in a much different place now.
Just a couple of final things. I mean, Nigel Farage reform, he's, they're surging, they're way ahead. What's your strategy to deal with that? And also, Labour's strategy is very, very clear now, which is it's us or it's them. Do you want Nigel Farage in number 10? You might hate us, and you clearly do if you look at the polling, but you're going to have to vote for us, and they're going to do everything to squeeze you.
They're already printing those leaflets off.
That's why they're doing it. They're thinking ahead. I mean, they're terrible strategists, but they've at least worked that one out. But they are, and that is going to, because lots of people are going to panic. They're going to panic the closer towards the election, and they're going to go, I hate this government, but I'd have to probably leave the country if Nigel Farage becomes Prime Minister. People think that. Yeah. What do you say to that? And what's the strategy?
I think there's two key things. One, and this is less my job and more people in the Labour Party's job, that I don't think Keir Starmer's going to last very long. I think that's a very obvious thing to say. And so if they really want to stop fascism and they want to stop Nigel Farage and the creep of fascism, then we need proportional representation. We have a broken voting system that means that Nigel Farage could get 25 to 30% of the vote and win on a majority of the vote. We don't need a fair voting system just to stop Nigel Farage. We need a fair voting system because what people vote for should actually be represented. But if the Labour Party is serious about saying in the next election, we actually want to stop the far right, then we need to be provoking the conversation right now about actually, if you want to do that, then we probably need a fair voting system. So I think when it does come around to their leadership election, I think proportional representation has to be a much bigger conversation than it's ever been before. Obviously not the only conversation, but that needs to be in the mix. That's not for the Green Party job. That's for the Labour membership. For the Green Party, I think our job is to offer an alternative. Reform has surged through the polls with the politics of hate, division and despair. And I think the idea that, just a couple of years ago, if someone said, is Nigel Farage going to surge in the polls, you'd be like, no, he couldn't even win a seat as an MP. Although, you could say he pretty much single-handedly or was the primary force behind Brexit. So he was doing things even outside of Parliament. And so we need to still reject, ultimately, the politics of reform. But I think we do need to look at their playbook and go, if a party can connect with the worries of people, let's not go into the politics of despair, but let's actually connect with people and then put the politics of hope and community. Now, that can't be some abstract, floaty idea, but I don't think it is abstract. That's about a few people in the society control our wealth, our power, and our assets. Those are all political choices. We can make different political choices, and it's time to take them back. And I think as we push that argument, and as we push the argument about changing people's material living, about bringing their bills down, and people know there is a party who is out there batting for them every single day, I'm absolutely convinced there's no reason why the Green Party won't surge in the polls too.
And just finally, I mean, your party was good. Jeremy Corbyn, Zara Sultana was going to set up as a new party for the left. Were you secretly a bit delighted when it hasn't gone that well for them? There's been a bit of a bust up. And what would the relationship be with whatever comes out of it? Because they're ploughing ahead, even though there's been this kerfuffle.
Yeah, I genuinely hate the fact that there's been a bust up. I think even if I start with the cynical, and I'll get to the much more important, but cynically, this is what people think of the left. And so when this happens, whether you're involved with it or not, I think it just kind of reinforces these ideas. So that's not blaming anyone or pointing fingers. It's just kind of going, I wish this had worked out. Second, you'll know this experience well, but you're often on panels. There's 4 people, 3 of them are slightly maybe a diverse group of opinions, but actually they're largely the same opinion with a slightly different tone. And so a diversity of messengers in our political space that are saying similar things. Elections is different, but largely around campaigning. I'd rather more people are pushing the wealth tax, more people are pushing funding for the National Health Service, pushing the issues of inequality. I think Gary Stevenson speaks about this well. I just interviewed him on my podcast, Bold Politics, which you're on tonight, just a small plug there. But about pushing this inequality issue, I think everyone needs to be talking about that. More widely, I like Jeremy, I like Zara. I was on a panel just last week with Zara and Faiza Shaheen. And I mean, it was just very obvious that our politics are aligned and we care about the same things. My relentless focus, though, right now is on the party, which is the Green Party. We got nearly 2 million votes. We've got those 39 second place finishes. Just last month, we had 3 defections from the Labour Party embarking to the Green Party. That's 20 that have happened this year, 10 of them in September alone. We just overtook the Lib Dems in membership. So I'd say to anyone who's looking for a political home right now, we do not have time to waste. Like literally, the shit has hit the fan already. It's not like it's at some distant time in the future. This is the moment we need to do it now, and this is the moment to join the Green Party.
And just very lastly, those 39 seats, how are you going to throw the kitchen sink at them now to win them? Because the Greens came second place without campaigning in those seats. But is the campaigning happening? What's the strategy?
Yeah, it's already starting to happen. So we've just launched a programme called Pathway to Parliament. This is also an answer to your previous question. We're really looking for more global majority candidates, more working class candidates, to make sure, particularly around the north of England and Wales, but everywhere pretty much, that we've got the right candidates, that we're doing things like public speaking training, policy training, just kind of getting people ready for when that election comes. In the constituencies themselves, it's interesting because I'm talking about these second place finishers, but it's important to note that Ellie Challenge, Adrian Ramsey came from 4th or 5th place to 1st place. So actually, when the Green Party goes, we're going to win somewhere, we've got the right campaign message, we've fundraised properly, and money is really important here, we've got the right resourcing and the right ground game, we can win everywhere. What I think has been missing, and it's exactly why I ran for leader, is our air game. And all I mean by that is the media, the way we're communicating. I think the winning combination is when you're on the ground, you're targeting those seats in the way, fair enough, that the Lib Dems do. But the Lib Dems, I mean, I literally couldn't tell you what they stand for. I think it's different things in different seats. And I think where the Green Party are ultimately different, and why we're overtaking the Lib Dems, and why we're on track to bigger success than ever before, is because what we're standing for is really clear, and it's going to be clear and consistent in every single one of those seats. I'm absolutely convinced when you're clear about what you stand for nationally, and you campaign at the local level so they trust their local politician, that's how we're going to win so many more seats.
That's from Zack.
Thanks, Aaron.
Let's see how it goes.
Cheers.
Cheers.